I've been out to events in Calgary. I've held round tables. I was at an energy conference talking about building a way to go forward, talking about my plan that would actually get pipelines built. And I requested an emergency debate a little while ago. We asked for another one this week to highlight the fact I think there's a lot of Canadians that might not be aware of just how bad things are. And I speak to people from Alberta all the time, not just members in my caucus, but people while I'm traveling, both in Alberta and across the country. And I am very aware that there's a very dire situation in Calgary right now specifically, but all throughout Alberta. And Conservatives not just care, we care, but we also have a plan to do something about it. And one of the things that really worries me is I think this was all part of Justin Trudeau's plan. He goes to Europe and he tells his friends on the international circuit that he's frustrated that he can't phase out the energy sector right away. So I think he's found a way to do it. Killing pipelines. It's by canceling Northern Gateway, canceling Energy East, and he's strangling the energy sector. And I'm very worried that was what he intended to do all along.
What was the debate like the other night? I had some people concerned that they thought there were a lot of empty seats there. And I know that's sort of the nature of debates. And you don't get a full house all the time except for in question period and when there's votes. But how did you feel that the debate went? Was it just Albertans talking to other Albertans, or did the rest of the country hear?
Well, I certainly hope that that the rest of the country heard. I know that our caucus was very well represented. And one thing I can tell you is that we get it. Yes, we have a lot of MPs from Alberta and Saskatchewan. My riding is in Regina. Evraz Steel actually makes the steel for the pipelines that get our energy to market. So I'm hyper aware of how important this is to the Western economy. But we also had participation from MPs, Conservative MPs from Ontario, who understand that the financial sector in this country is heavily dependent on energy companies, and there will be job loss in Toronto if we don't do something about this. We have people who represent ridings where there's heavy equipment manufacturers that used to sell equipment that moved earth, that dug holes, that helped put the installation in for these things. There are skilled workers from parts of the country that when they didn't have jobs in Atlantic Canada and some parts of Ontario, and they would go to the oil patch and work for a period of time. So on our side of the chamber, there's a very high degree of awareness to say, look, this isn't just about our hearts going out to a part of the country that's being hit hard. That is absolutely part of it. But it's also about the fact that the energy sector in Western Canada is a fundamental pillar for the rest of the country. And this is a national crisis. This is going to have national implications if we don't get a Conservative government in 2019 that actually gets pipelines built to get our energy to market.
The thing that I find frustrating is you did try to bring up the emergency debate a few weeks ago. They wouldn't let you do it. And then because we've got the Oshawa plant closing down and Jerry Dye is losing his mind, they decide to have an emergency debate on the auto sector. And I think that's the only reason why they agreed to your motion, is it would have looked a little bit silly having an emergency debate over the loss of 2,500 jobs in Oshawa and not 100,000 plus in Alberta.
Well, it would have looked terrible. It would have looked absolutely terrible, which is one of the reasons why we asked for the emergency debate. Because, look, we're a national party when we have a national perspective on things, and any job loss anywhere is something that concerns us, especially when it's a sign of major problems in the economy. So, I not to diminish at all the importance of the automobile sector in this particular plant to the people of Oshawa. But yeah, you're right. There's been sustained job loss for a long period of time in Alberta, and we have had emergency debates on the energy crisis, been turned down. So we felt, okay, great. Let's talk about the auto sector. Let's talk about how this will impact Oshawa. Let's talk about solutions that might make Canada the type of place that auto companies want to keep jobs instead of pull jobs out. But let's also remind people about the devastating impacts of this Trudeau government's policies on Western Canada, on the energy sector, because the job losses are staggering, and I am very, very worried about the next 6 months in Alberta. I'm worried about what's to come because there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The shovels haven't been put in the ground for Trans Mountain. We still don't have any other pipeline proponent talking about new routes. All those companies that have pulled out of Canada are still building energy projects. They're just doing it in other countries. And in the case of Kinder Morgan, Justin Trudeau gave them $4.5 billion of your tax money so they can build those projects that are going to compete with Canadian energy. It's unbelievable. If it weren't so tragic, we would attack. It's not even a partisan thing anymore. It's about a fundamental part of our economy, and the thousands of women and men in Alberta that have been hit so hard from this, and the fact that it's going to get worse. So, we can't afford 4 more years of Justin Trudeau, but I'm worried that we might not be able to afford 9 more months of Justin Trudeau.
What I don't understand is how the LEAP manifesto authors won, how stopping the construction of energy infrastructure seemed to be the only answer. Before you got on, I was reading that the European Union, they've now developed a new target. They are going to go climate neutral by 2050. European Commissioner for Climate Action and Energy, Miguel Arias-Canetti, said during a press conference, we already have the tools to achieve net zero emissions. Net zero emissions mean any greenhouse gases emitted need to be soaked up by forest growth or new technologies that can remove carbon from the atmosphere. Hey, I'm all in. If it means that I can start planting more trees or putting more shrubs in my backyard or spending a weekend helping to in some way encourage plant growth, and that we'd have carbon capture and storage, and we drop this notion that ending the construction of energy infrastructure is going to get us there, why can the European Union get away with doing that and we can't?
Well, we have groups of people in Canada that are ideologically opposed to the energy sector, and logic doesn't work with them. Because I've spoken with some of them, and I said, so you protest and you block this pipeline on Western Canada. I don't see you trying to blockade the St. Lawrence after tanker of Saudi oil comes in, and all the diesel fuel that's burned shipping the oil from Saudi Arabia with terrible human rights records. I don't see it protesting that. We have refineries in Canada that have the highest environmental standards in the world. We're shipping oil by rail, which is burning diesel. So when you talk to someone and say, it's actually better for the environment, you can reduce emissions by moving this energy through pipelines. You're refining it in Canada, which not only creates jobs and opportunities here, but it's also better for the environment because we have higher standards. When you drive out that investment and growth, when you have projects being built in China and India and other countries that use coal-powered power plants, you're actually getting more emissions in the air. And you walk people through the thinking on that, and they're still opposed to it because they just somehow think that Canada could be the first one to kill our entire energy sector, and somehow, I don't know, we'll all bike to work in minus 40-degree weather, not heat our homes in the winter. But it's not logical. It's ideological. And it's time that we start calling this out. It is funded by foreign groups. There are an awful lot of Canadian organizations that get money from millionaires in other countries, funneling money in through Tides and the Clinton Foundation, and they're distorting the conversation that we're having here in Canada. That's why one of the things that's part of my plan to get pipelines built is to get foreign funding out of the approvals process. That advocacy groups that receive foreign funding are not entitled to have the same standing that Canadians have as we go through these approvals.
That's one great idea. And I know I talked to Blaine Calkins earlier in the week about trying to change the legislation with some of the initiatives he's doing. Anything else you would do to get pipelines built? What would we expect to see with an Andrew Scheer government next year?
Well, it starts with repealing C-69, and everyone who knows about that piece of legislation knows it's a Liberal government bill that is being called the No More Pipelines bill, because that is the effect of it. It would kill any chance of having another big energy project in this country. The Liberals know it. It's part of their plan, as I said, to just squeeze out the energy sector. It also means repealing the carbon tax, because you can't have a carbon tax and have a competitive environment to put investments in that create jobs. I also said that I will invoke the section of the Constitution that talks about things that are in the national interest, so that federal jurisdiction could be clearly defined, so that we don't have, as we see in British Columbia, provincial governments, NDP governments, blockading our exports. It also, to get the First Nations consultations done properly, establishes a ministerial personal representative so that we don't have to go through this maddening process where every 3 or 4 months there's another court ruling. It would provide clarity and certainty. I would also fast-track all jurisdictional questions on the front end. The Liberals still haven't done that. There are things they can do that's in their control. They can take all the uncertainty out of some of these aspects by putting a rushed fast-track case towards the Supreme Court so we can get certainty. Every person I've spoken to in the energy sector said, tell me where the goalposts are, and I'll line up and I'll kick the ball. But you can't have it moving back 5 yards every time I start running. We've got a government here that is acting like Lucy to Charlie Brown, and these proponents will go to places where there is certainty about what hoops they need to go to get things built. As right now, it's not Canada under this Liberal government.
All right. Well, thanks for the work that you and your caucus are doing on our behalf. We'll continue watching and hope you make some progress there.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
You got it. That's Andrew Scheer, leader of the Conservative Party and leader of the official opposition since 2017. Now, you guys have been wanting to hear what he's doing about it. That's what he is doing about it.